and thank you for joining us today in the latest Boutique Hotel News webinar. And today we are going to be talking about advanced technology. For those who don't know me, I'm Eloise Hanson and I'm the editor of Boutique Hotel News, and we're an online B2B multimedia platform for the global boutique, lifestyle and luxury hotel industry. So we have a couple of sponsors on our webinar series, the first of which is Like Magic. Like Magic is a data-driven hospitality platform for guests, employees and operators. And we have a short video to introduce Like Magic to you all today. And if you'd like to hear or learn further information about Like Magic, their website and LinkedIn profiles, as well as a contact email address, has been popped into the chat. And our second sponsor of this series is London Rock Partners, a hotel management company. And we have Claire on the call to introduce. So Claire, over to you.
Thank you very much, Eloise. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Claire Anna, and I am the co-founder of London Rock Partners. We are a UK-based hospitality management company who started out in business nearly 2 years ago. We came to the market to offer a more flexible solution to the very traditional hotel management platforms. We specialise in transforming underperforming and distressed assets. We work across branded and independent hotels and across the whole range of hospitality assets. So whether that's bars, restaurants, pubs, hotels. Our goal is to make contracting terms really easy and flexible to kind of fall in line with the changing face of UK hospitality, which over the last few years has been turbulent to say the least. We currently manage 2 Hilton hotels, an adventure park, Europe's first man-made surfing lagoon, and a core hotel in Bournemouth, and a new 5-star property in the Northwest. We've got an active pipeline and we are really looking forward to talking to any owners or investors offline. I think my details are in the chat room. Enjoy the webinar and I look forward to working with you. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Claire. And as she mentioned, Claire's details and London Rock Partners website has been popped into the chat if you would like to learn more. So now let's meet our panelists today. Unfortunately, Ken has been unable to join the call, though he might have some luck a little bit later on this afternoon. So we are going to move along. Unfortunately, we have the wrong name under Mark's headshot there. So Mark Brown from Rendezvous, over to you first, please.
This afternoon, I'm Louis Keeley.
Sorry, Mark.
That's okay. So yeah, my name's Mark Brown. I have been in technology for 30 years and in hospitality tech for the last 12 years, mainly on the distribution side, etc. Until about 14 months ago when I started working with Rendezvous, which basically it's a metaverse for hotels. So
I'm very much looking forward to learning more about this. Yeah. We ran a feature annually. BHN predicts our trends for the year ahead, and I think digital twins are going to have a major role to play.
Yeah.
So very much looking forward to learning more from you, Mark. Leonard, over to you next, please.
Well, thank you, Eloise. My name is Leonard de Jong. I'm the president of hospitality at Planet, and I've only been on the dark side, as I say, for the last 6 months. But the 16 years prior to that, I was the chief commercial officer and one of the founding team members of Citizen M Hotels, and owner operator with around 30 hotels currently across the globe. And yeah, happy to talk today about all the things I've learned in the last 6 months, but also prior to that, of course, when it comes to specialty payments.
Thank you, Leonard. And over to Roman, please.
Hi everybody, my name is Roman Townsend. I'm the managing director of Belvira Partners. We are a PR consultancy that focuses exclusively in the travel technology space. We have clients in corporate travel, payments tech, within travel, aviation tech, but obviously here today I'm thinking more about the hospitality tech side of things.
Thank you, Roman. And the LinkedIn profiles of all our speakers have been popped into the chat, and I would encourage everybody today to connect and carry on the conversation even after it has finished today. So before we get stuck into the nitty-gritty, I would just like to provide a quick overview of how this webinar is going to run. So we're going to spend around 45 minutes in discussion with our panelists today, followed by some time at the end to take any questions from our audience. So I'm calling on the floor right now. If you have any questions, please submit these using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens, and I will keep my beady eyes on that, and I will ask those questions as and when relevant. And just as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, and every registrant will receive a copy of that recording within 48 hours. So I just thought I would give you guys some context slides. This is really to mull over the topic before we get stuck into the main discussion. And one topic that has been dominating headlines at the moment is artificial intelligence and the role of tools such as ChatGPT within the travel landscape. So I decided to go directly to the source and ask, what opportunities does ChatGPT present for travel and hospitality? And on the right-hand side of your screens, I took a screen grab of our conversation, and it highlights 5 key areas that ChatGPT and AI chatbots can help with. And these 5 areas are customer service automation, personalized travel recommendations, virtual travel assistance, language support, and sales and marketing. But to give you an example of how hotels, sorry team, can we go back to the first slide? To give you an example of how hotels are experimenting with these advanced concierge style services, the Aiden brand under BWH Hotel Group, which is the bottom left story on your screens, the brand has introduced a digital hologram concierge to support its customers. And as you can see from that headline, BWH Hotel Group is aiming to double the Aiden portfolio this year, so expect to see more holograms in the future. But on the next slide, we're actually going to be moving from holograms to robots. Google's just unveiled an AI-powered robot which integrates vision and language to enable robotic control. And this means that the robot can perform tasks from voice commands without the need for retraining. Now, I'm asking everybody on the call today, is this the future? So let me know your thoughts by posting in the chat, whether you think robots or maybe chatbots have a place in hospitality. But the other headlines on this screen paint a slightly different picture of tech adoption in hospitality. The middle article, which reads "The Salmon of Doubt, What Tech Will Revolutionize the Hospitality Industry in 2023. It provides, it's a thread effectively detailing different opinions on what technology will actually revolutionize the industry. And it's not as advanced as you might think. And examples include attribute-based upselling, easier payment processes, optimizing housekeeping, and evolving the PMS to a central data management platform. So let's talk about advanced technology. And I would like to kick off with a question to Leonard, please. Where is the hospitality industry right now in its adoption of tech? And do you foresee any future challenges?
Oh, great question. And actually, I prepared a little bit of an answer on this because all of these previous slides actually get me thinking in a whole new direction on this. But if you think about, every, piece of technology that's being launched, in the hotel industry, it gets a lot of headlines. But I think where the hotel industry is, it's fragmented, right? In Planet, actually, we have two verticals we target, hospitality and retail. And if I look at the sales cycle, with my retail colleagues versus hospitality, my own team, it's so different. In the German region, when the retail guy books a success, he's sold to Prada. But then Prada is centrally managed, everything is centrally managed and locally executed, so decentrally executed. If I think back about my journey at Citizen M, we started from retail. Right, so the founder of the company came from retail, so we set up a very centralized company. Up to the sandwich that is served, New York Times Square, it was decided on from our office in the Netherlands. That's how centrally things were. Every piece of advertising, collateral, pricing, the price management of the hotel in Taipei is done from the Netherlands. But if you look in the hospitality industry in general, so think about this. Okay, let's do ChatGPT. Let's do chatbots. Where do you start, right? So you get on average probably 15, 20 LinkedIn pitches per week from companies that are providing all these kind of services. And there you are with your independent 60-room hotel in Amsterdam. Hey, you're being helped by some of the big brands for distribution, some brand standards. So I don't want to be providing a generalist answer to where the hotel industry is at the moment, because Booking.com might be analyzing technology. Airbnb might be analyzing technology, Hilton or Marriott.com might be analyzing technology, but to implement it, you have to work across the 7 million properties that Booking.com advertises it has. So, the hospitality industry by nature is defragmented, and therefore, if you think about the consistent use of technology across the industry is always behind, let's say, sister verticals or adjacent verticals where there's less players. Less players means easier execution. We always being compared with car rental industry, of course, and the aviation industry. And you think about aviation, how many airlines are there really? And what's the skill of these airlines? If an airline decides to implement, ChatGPT, the rest will follow. It's 80 implementations. If the hotel industry decides to do something, it's a couple of 100,000 implementations in different countries, different levels of knowledge. And usually with hotels being managed by people that have climbed up through the F&B ranks. So there's not a natural passion for technology either. So it's a complicated landscape.
I asked a question earlier about whether our audience thinks robots will have a place in hospitality, and I would just like to read out some of these comments. Absolutely not. I hope not on property. Considering I can't stand talking to a robot when I use my online banking app and need to talk to someone, I think robots should have a very limited job if they're to be involved. It will be, for sure, be valuable, but when it is used in a sensible, suitable, still ethical way. And also, I think in the right place, 100%, a high street Italian restaurant I used recently used an incredible chatbot to take dinner reservations, and you honestly can't tell the difference over the phone. I do think there will always be a need for face-to-face customer service roles, people by people. So I just thought I would, again, once again.
Louise, can I intercept here for one moment before we move on to the next question? Because
Sure.
I love the nature of the standpoints of this, and I think let's not be binary about this, but let's give people a choice. Do you rather wait 10 minutes on the phone to speak with a customer service representative in person, or would you like to get an answer quickly processed, right? Would you like to stand 10 minutes in a queue at the front desk, or would you like technology to help you with that? Right. So I think, those are the kind of questions we need to ask ourselves as an industry. If you're evaluating those technologies, don't just look at the thing by itself, but look at it in comparison to what has been provided today.
I would just like to add to that, which is in computing, for years, there's been this thing called the Turing test, which basically says if you're having a conversation with something behind a screen, and from the answers, if you can't tell it's not human, then it's human. And I think what's going to happen in our industry is that these bots will get rolled out that can pass the Turing test, and people won't even know that they've transitioned to talking to bots. What we have now is very primitive, but 4 or 5 years time, they'll be ubiquitous.
Mark, staying with you for my next question. I understand that to be able to operate in the metaverse, you very much need that human input or output. It's not, I don't think we can just leave it to a computerized avatar to run certain services and such. But how open are accommodation providers to new technologies such as the metaverse?
Well, it's quite interesting because the sort of management who are actually running operations are a lot more enthusiastic about the technology and can see the possibilities of the technology than the actual owners of the hotels who have to pay for the technology. And at the moment, it's not easy to make a use case, generally speaking, for the ROI for an establishment that's already up and running. But there are specific instances where you can. So the key areas are for new builds or refurbs, where you want to be able to sell the property before it's actually finished. Also where you've got properties that are in a destination a long way away from everyone, like on a typically you might have to get a flight to a city, then an internal flight, and then a boat to the island. But be able to preview it in a digital twin and meet someone from that resort and have that sort of immersive real-time tour and conversation is a very powerful tool. So it's very early days. The other big use case for it as well is can be in training. And what was quite illuminating when I because we've done some work with Atlantis Palm in Dubai, when I was out there, I was in reception and I was waiting to check in. I was sat down and I showed one of the concierge staff digital twins of spaces that we built at Atlantis, and suddenly I was surrounded by about 20 staff because he was just calling everyone over, and people were sort of saying, wow, I've never been there, and this is their own hotel where they work. And I was showing them twins of spaces which they hadn't actually ever been into. So it's very early. If I want to give an analogy to Web 2, we're in like the sort of late 90s, I suppose, in terms of website adoption, very early.
I understand that Rendezverse specializes in the meetings and events industry when it comes to the metaverse, and I see great potential there, particularly for travel planners, looking from afar. But what ways can this digital twin technology help to drive that innovation in hospitality? Okay, so I think this is across the board, not just in MICE, but one of the big challenges for the industry is demographics. The number of staff coming through is massively reduced, especially post-pandemic. So we're working with partners in Europe who their sales teams are down 70% in staff headcount, and they can't, for love or money, recruit people. As soon as they get someone new, someone leaves. So it's really tough. So as an early adopter of this technology, the MICE industry, it enables sales teams to be more productive. So instead of having to host 20 site inspections in a week, of which 18 out of the 20 are going to be tire kicking, and they think another 3 competitors or 4 competitors, and they're not going to book an event, is if you could host them in a digital twin first, just to qualify the prospect, it means all the admin associated with the site visit is gone. You don't need to deal with it.
And also there's a huge saving in time and CO2 emissions as well for an industry that is challenged with net zero targets.
I think there's great opportunity on the sustainability front. Even to just looking at how do we introduce the right technology for our hotel that can help reduce the carbon emissions, digital twins. I think there's something really, there's great potential there.
And there's also the ability as well for especially sort of meeting and events type hotels and venues to offer the ability for hybrid events as well. So if there are people who are sort of challenged with their travel or getting there, or there's disruption to travel, it's not just pandemics, but if anyone remembers the volcano in Iceland that took flights out for a month or so across Europe, these events can still go ahead in the digital twin space of that hotel if they've invested in that technology. But definitely, it's very predictable that over the next few years that digital twins will be built. They're like kind of like a one-off investment. They're good for training. They're good for being able to show prospective event planners different layouts on the fly, do a setup for their clients so they can bring their clients into the venue to see what it looks like. And even for big conference and exhibition centers that maybe host an event on a yearly cycle, they spend 2 or 3 years planning that event, and people from all around the world keep flying to the place to have meetings and stuff. They could all collaborate and work in a digital twin, and again, massively increasing sustainability.
Thanks, Mark. I can see a lot of commentary in the chat about chatbots and specifically ChatGPT. So whilst I read those through, I'm going to fire off a question to Roman. Now, as somebody who's based in the PR and in communications world, I mean, how might ChatGPT impact travel PR and marketing efforts?
You're going to read those out, or you want me
to? Oh no, that's my question to you, Roman.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, just to add to a few of the points from earlier on, actually, I think people's willingness to adapt to these things will be dependent upon the experience. Obviously, whether it works and it works well, they'll use these types of tools. But I think also there's just, it's right now, it's new, it's scary. You think back to call centers when they first came in the 70s, 80s, I'm sure there was, reluctance or uptake in that. My grandmother still now wouldn't call a call center. She'd rather go, somewhere in person. She's very elderly, but, but I think you get the idea. I think also when we talk about these kind of chatbots and interacting with robots and so on, my personal experience to this goes back to 1999. I remember my housemate, talking with an automated telephone line, and that seemed really funny, and we all laughed about it. We kept calling, and it was very amusing. I don't know if call centers and automated telephone services have really advanced that much since then, and a quarter century has gone by. So I think we might want to take all these things with a pinch of salt, and we can talk about that later. Looking at the PR space, PR, marketing, content generation, branding, journalism as well. I think this is very exciting. We're seeing, so we've got a client who, for example, in a company called Wayaway, they're a meta search company, and they told me that they don't use graphic designers anymore to create images for their advertising campaigns. They do digital advertising campaigns because they found that by using, I don't think they use ChatGPT, but they've got some other kind of artificial intelligence tool that it can create images that not only don't cost them anything, that actually get conversion rates that aren't just like go up by like 1%, which is great in conversions. It goes up by like a factor of 5. So there's no going back to them. That's it. Graphic designers are out of a job as far as they're concerned. Perhaps they use them for other specific needs, but I thought that's quite interesting development. And I was also chatting last week at ITB with the director of marketing for a big travel technology company, who would probably not like me to say that to name him, but and he was telling me how he's got they've got their own personal account now for the company, and that he in his personal life is using it a lot to create things like writing formal letters and creating content, and they're looking into that for the business. So I think it's got enormous potential. I know of at least one person with teenage children who's told me that that kids at school were using this, and that the kids at school are getting caught, partly because it's not as good at creating the content as you would think, and there are certain sort of telltale signs, partly a bit like if you think back to our own schooling experiences, when you copy and paste stuff, when you plagiarize, your teachers know that because they know those texts off by heart, they know Shakespeare word for word or whatever, and so you can get caught pretty quickly. And I think in that sense, yeah, there's limitations, not least because in the case of ChatGPT, all the data that's drawing from only goes up to the year 2021. So if you were to write anything about geopolitics, well, they wouldn't include the war, the Russia invasion of the Ukraine. It wouldn't talk about what's happened in Turkey in the last couple of weeks. It'd be completely out of date. So it does require anything you produce for you to proofread it and so on. So there's limitations. It's also my experience as a sort of marketing person, communications person, is the writing part is pretty easy, and you can find some pretty good writing people out there. What you really need to do is to drill down on what's the topic, what's that word, what's that raw nerve you can push right now with clients, prospects, whatever it is who you're trying to engage, that will really capture their attention, and that was the question you can pose to them that makes them put down whatever they're doing and say, I've got to read this. After that, I can find lots of people who can go away and write that content for me. As a business person, I'd love to have a world in which I've got a ChatGPT account for 20 euros a month, and it doesn't cost me the money I have to pay all the writers right now. I think we're a long way away from that, from what I can see.
Yeah, there's a lot of comments in the chat, particularly around AI, chatbots, ChatGPT, about not rushing into it before we know what challenge we're trying to solve. It's all about solving problems and challenges as we apply AI to different situations. Its usages will become clearer, but it will take a few years. First adopters only with deep pockets at this time, they will reap the initial rewards. So broadening my question, Roman, to sort of the ChatGPT and travel and hospitality, do you see it as an opportunity or a threat?
Well, I'd see it as both. I mean, it's definitely a huge opportunity, and I think we're back, I don't know, early internet era, and there's the big bright future ahead of us. But threats, I think, if you're companies that have fallen behind on the innovation curve, then definitely those are at the forefront of these things to invest in it and treat it properly. It's an opportunity. But to sort of dive into this, one of your list of you had earlier on the 5 points that areas you can help in. You didn't have operations. I think you had customer service in there. You didn't have operations. And I would sort of draw this conversation a little bit back to the B2B part of the experience. I think ChatGPT is fantastic. There are other AI tools out there. I think we need to think about all the possibilities these could have for helping every aspect of the travel experience, whether that's the search, stays, the actual booking, pre-trip, post-trip, customer services, and all the things that go on behind the scenes. And that's certainly a lot of our clients are companies who provide services behind the scenes that the traveller doesn't know about. And there are an infinite amount of applications for that there. When you think about the aviation and the operations that go on there to make sure you get from A to B smoothly, transfers, tours and experiences in destination, and all the things that people do when they have to interact with the manager or the boss or complain. Limitations that we're seeing and that our clients are talking about. Well, ChatGPT is only based on publicly sourced information. And so if you're talking about a lot of offline information, so you think like loyalty programs where they're behind a password protected site, or information that's not easily available online. I just came out from ITB last week. You look on, if you're taking a taxi to ITB and you go on their website and you say, which door should I go to? It doesn't even provide you any information. That's of no use. And so these tools can only help you with the publicly available information. In the case of ChatGPT, it only goes up to 2021. and that's that makes great limits. It's also not personalized as well, which I think is another point. And if you Google, people are good at oh, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think I just wanted to steer you also towards the fact that actually the real power opportunities in the technology is not the general ChatGPT. It's actually applying the learning algorithm to your own customer data from all your. So for example, we were talking about this the other day. If I'm showing my meeting space, there's only so many questions I'm ever going to get asked about that venue. And probably within less than 500 conversations, we've got them all. And that's enough to create what would appear to be a very clever chatbot, but it's just learned it off 500 site tours that have been done, because there's a very finite number of questions that would ever be asked. So the other big area I think where AI can impact hospitality is in the business of revenue forecasting, rate management, and how to and all that stuff. You know, if you had an AI that could like have inputs from the weather, what events were going on in the city, and all those kind of things coming in, so to predict demand, I think that's another big area which this is going to have a big impact on.
It's called a revenue management system.
Examples, great examples, and we have a client in that space who is looking at that. And I think the personalization thing as well. You think, you know, Google is very good at Amazon very good at predicting what you want to buy. Why? Because it's got, in my case, got search history going back more than 20 years. Whereas if I deal with a company that doesn't have that, their ChatGPT is going to just kind of pump out the same thing that it would offer to you, Mark, or to you, Leonard, or Eloise, or maybe just, you know, regionalized based upon where we're based in the world. So again, you've got to kind of get access to that data. That then creates all the, you know, all the challenges of doing that, the data privacy and so on. So we've got, I think it's like we're going back to 1999 again. The technology is there to do the automated calls, but people weren't ready for it, and companies couldn't implement it. And 25 years on, we haven't advanced that much. And my fear is that we could be in the same situation. We've got some great tech, but no one can implement it right the way down to the the bike rental company that I want to get, you know.
If you consider the furore and the amount of resources that went into cookie privacy issues, okay, which compared to the privacy issues with this AI machine learning stuff, you know, it's just completely orders of magnitude bigger. So I think that's another big challenge that needs to be overcome before there's general adoption, is privacy. That, you know, that at the end of the day, and that's going to take years.
On Mark's
I think
point,
particularly because we look at for this to really work, it's probably you're going to need the advertisers to come in, like Google and so on. And again, you know, they're going to want to place adverts in there. They don't want to capture your data because they're going to be the ones funding it, like we saw with search. And you know, it's again, you know, privacy. You can imagine all the kind of regulators looking at this very closely right now, scrutinizing it.
On Mark's point about revenue and how AI can maybe help forecasting revenue, Leonard, I'd like to sort of broaden that question slightly and ask how smart technologies can actually open up revenue generating opportunities for hospitality operators.
I was just joking to Mark, you know, it's called a revenue management system. I think there's a lot of AI already assisting, you know, revenue managers every day on optimizing, you know, rates and availability and channel management. But, you know, to be honest, I think, you know, we're very good in this hospitality industry to tackle hypothetical cases, but we just need to apply technology where it is useful for your operation, right? And I think, you know, we need to, you know, work up this Maslow pyramid for, you know, hospitality technology needs, where if I check into any hotel today, you know, when I booked through my company's, you know, travel booking policy, Travel Perk. Travel Perk is, you know, being distributed either through Booking.com, Expedia Direct, and it ends up with a virtual card. I have a hit rate of around 50%, where the hotel's front desk doesn't recognize like this has been a virtual card. Now, in my previous company, and I want to, you know, go back now to not really revenue generating possibilities, but more cost saving possibilities. If everything is centralized and if half your bookings come in with a virtual card and you operate around 7,000 rooms, I can tell you that virtual cards is a problem, right? If you decentralize this, it's a problem of a front desk clerk. And now you don't have a front desk, right? You have self-check-in machines that don't know about a virtual credit card. So we've been using AI, and actually this company spun out of Citizen M. It's now an RPA company, a robotics process automation company, who are basically replicating just very dumb human task, which is find a reservation with virtual card, charge the card with the payment processor in the back, post the amount on the folio, and that ensures the customer doesn't have to pay. Mm-hmm. Now, if you want to tackle cost efficiency and customer experience at the same time, automate some of these processes. Think about just using a standard RPA company. There's multiple out there. There's RoboSize.me. This company out of Citizen M is called APHY, APHY. They're doing no-show processes, reservation processes, virtual card charging processes. I think these are the areas where you can really, as a hotelier, benefit from some of this technology. And even, ChatGPT is such a broad topic and it can mean a lot for different industries, but chatbots are not new. We automated customer service with chatbots already for those questions indeed. Where can I park my car in Glasgow? Now, honestly, if anyone, working at Citizen M needs to answer that question again, we're really doing something wrong, right? That should just be an automatic reply on the chat. And I know it's a chatbot and you always need to have humans ready. But my philosophy, within Citizen M, but also now my new job is really to make sure that people do what people are good at. And providing hospitality, providing a human service, and the Turing test, let it be a real person at the front desk, or just walking into a property. Good luck beating a genuine smile. That's a robot cannot do. But a lot of these automated tasks that are boring and expensive, especially with a labor shortage, let's automate the hell out of these. And the technology is there. You don't need to use ChatGPT. There's hospitality technology companies that are providing these services to you right now. I'm not pitching one of our own, right? This is not something that we provide, but I know there's plenty of them out there.
I'd like to stick on the topic of payments, and anecdotally, I've had many conversations recently with hoteliers, and it's become a bit of a concern. It's become an issue that it's not streamlined, it's not simple, and it's not personalized either. So Lennart, why do you think payments has become such a concern for hoteliers, and what is actually causing this disruption?
I think, the major reason is we, as in the hospitality industry, lost our free out of jail card from the credit card schemes. For over, I've been in this hospitality technology space since the year 2000. I've been attending forums like HETNA. We talked about payments, and the first concern was how to process reservation, rates and availability, standards for that. I think they're still talking about that. But next thing was payments. But if you can, just part of a reservation broadcast a 16-digit number with an expiration date, and anyone can take anything out of that person's wallet, that's what I call a free out of jail card. And, European Commission has sanctioned that, with the secure card authentication and the PSD2 regulation. And I think that's hitting the hotel industry hard. And this is why payments is becoming a thing. You can no longer just ask people to take a picture of the front and back of a credit card and send it over. These payment processes that are still happening in the United States, where somebody takes your card away to the back room, makes a copy of it, and then, gives it back to you, and whatever process is happening in the back. These are processes that are slowly in the US, but fast in Europe are coming to an end. And that means that you need to find a new way to capture credit card information in your e-commerce processes, and e-commerce being in your website, through brand.com, through, if you have a master website with multiple hotels, how does the individual hotel, and that you have to think about treasury, right? So, the brand.com of a small hotel group with 20 hotels might be an entity in the UK, but then there's a hotel in Israel that needs to receive the fund. How do you then handle prepaid rates? How do you transfer credit card information that are good for no-show? And so all of these processes were forced to change. That's number one reason that we all talk about payments now. And the second reason is really the change of, the way that you pay as a consumer. You see this now in your day-to-day life with Apple Pay, with QR, code-based payment methods in every country. This is changing so fast that the way that you contract with the payment provider as a hotel company is really moving from your bank, right? So as a hotel, you have a bank account. The bank tells you, you have to work with us as an acquirer, and here's a payment terminal. And that payment terminal usually does MasterCard, Visa, Amex, and this is where it stops. It's a pretty antiquated device, and you still see them a lot. And that is changing really rapidly. Consumers have a different expectation. So there's those two things coming together, regulation, being a force of change, and the consumer expecting something different, is why I think payment is such a hot topic in the hospitality industry.
Leonard, would you be able to elaborate on what travelers are now coming to expect in terms of their technology wants and needs? Could you just provide a quick overview of what you think now that what you might call the technology traveler is coming to expect?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a thing that is, the technology traveler. Everybody has a certain level of use of technology, right? And I remember anecdotally, my mom asking me before the iPad was launched, like, can you, talk to your dad in case he passes away before I do, that at least you have the password to the computer and then you explain me how everything works. It's like, 15 years ago. And now she's able to operate the iPad, without ever being educated on it better than my dad was, who's always been in, accounting, controlling, and computers. And, so it's the technology has gone so fast. And, some people are really up for technology, but I think technology, when it comes to the hotel experience, should be the same as payments. It should be invisible. It should be enriching customer experiences. And I know there's some brands out there that are making technology like their anchors, like the Yotel in New York is using a robot for luggage, right? So it's one of the gimmicks. You come in, you make a picture of it. But in general, I think if you are applying technology for frequent travelers that are wanting to use their technology, you have to think about, do you have the ability to cast to your TV?
Yeah.
Do you have easy payment processes? Do you have easy booking processes, frictionless? Is the technology in the back, or is the technology hindering you and to do your job?
Roman, I can see your hand up.
I think there's one other factor as well, adding to both of the previous questions about why payments now and what's driving expectations. I think COVID massively accelerated a lot of technological trends in the sort of consumer space, which meant that a lot of people, maybe your mother or either my mother, and people who maybe before didn't do online shopping suddenly started doing it. They became more more familiar, comfortable with making online payments, online ordering, and so I think you've seen just acceleration in the way in which the expectations of consumers have accelerated for how they should be able to interact and the technology they should be able to use that might not have happened otherwise. And in the meantime, hotels and airlines, I think, have been particularly left behind. They haven't caught up in quite the same way. So there's a bit of a gap right now. I think that, that people are leaving money on the table there. COVID also as well, I think, accelerated for airlines and hotels. I think it accelerated their desire to get things like payments and other areas right, because there were periods where some of these teams didn't have that much to do, and they said, okay, well, let's see what we can, how we can look at these things. If we don't have the money in place, let's look at that. And payments traditionally has been an area where the fees and the transaction costs and the resources for doing those things. On the B2B side as well, we work with Neum. They're on the B2B side of the payments payment part for airlines and hotels. Can be incredibly costly. It can result in them having to have negative working capital and so on. So people have taken a close look at this. I'd be curious to see now whether we're back in a boom time and people are sort of returning to profit again, whether or not they place the same focus on that as they were looking at a couple of years ago, when they're really trying to squeeze all the cost centers, and then looking at something like payments and saying, well, this could be a revenue generator rather than a cost center. But yeah, COVID's been a massive accelerator in that, and let's see what comes for this recovery period, whether that's whether we roll with that or whether we go back to where we were before.
Building on that, Mark, I'd like to come to you next, please, and ask, how tech savvy is hospitality staff? And this is again going back to the point that I made earlier, that I think in order to operate in the metaverse, you do need a physical person behind a screen in order to be able to control and move an avatar in such a way. And I think you mentioned this earlier, Mark, about training programs that the Metaverse has great opportunity to help train.
So in terms of having the skills to actually, if you like, enter and participate in the Rendezverse, if you can play a computer game, you're in. You know, anyone who's got a mobile phone under the age of 50 is in. You know, it's that aspect is you know, it's a given. There's no training required. Where a digital twin can be used as a training tool would be, for example, showing staff that would be laying out a ballroom. Okay, here's how the ballroom needs to look in 3D. You know, these exits over here needs to be kept clear. This is where you're going to bring all the stuff in. So, you know, especially when hospitality use a lot of temporary staff, and it's the first time people have are going to be at that venue. They haven't been there before. The ability to maybe access via a tablet or even a mobile phone in a headset enclosure or a full headset, people can familiarize themselves ahead of the day of putting on that event, for example. So there's kind of doing facilities management, going in, looking around. So there's lots of different use cases. Another one would be instead of for VVIPs have their own security teams, they might normally send 20 personnel to go and do an inspection of the whole venue. If something goes wrong, what's the quickest route from here out of the building? Instead of needing to send 20 people, they maybe only need to send 2 or 3. The rest can actually be tutored on the whole space inside the digital twin. So
something why I wanted to bring up training programs specifically is that we held an event not so long ago. Leonard, I can see your hand up. I'll come to you in just a moment. We were looking at how technology is helping hoteliers, particularly on the staffing side. And one of the biggest barriers to adopting technology isn't so much the cost, which is what I think we often jump to, but it's actually on the training side. How do we train our staff in order to get up to speed with the new technology that we are now implementing? And I would imagine that as technology is now advancing at such a speed.
Well, see, I hear what you're saying. And with historical kind of software systems, which is like keyboard, screen driven, that does require sort of lots of like sit down formal training. The difference in the metaverse is actually is like you're going to the space and everything is becoming more intuitive. It's like, oh, there's something flashing over there. What happens if I touch it? Oh, I don't need to read an instruction manual. I don't need to read an instruction manual. Right, when you're in, look 94 degrees to the right. You'll see a button or a terminal. Walk over there. All that because I'll just go in there. My attention's drawn and I'll go over there. So it's everything is intuitive, like in real life. You don't have to document, something that if you were using. I mean, if you think about, I guess the best analogy to use is, I don't know if you're old enough to remember MS-DOS and the programs that we had then, where literally you'd be typing text commands on the command line to invoke programs or to execute batch jobs. Then we had the transition to the Windows interface where you could point and click. I mean, the training reduction from the first scenario to the GUI point and click scenario was massive. And there's that kind of same thing is going on in any kind of 360 metaverse type world where everything's intuitive. You don't have that curve. You just go in and play, basically.
Okay. And Leonard, coming to you with your hand up shortly earlier.
Yeah, no, just on this conversation, I think, like technology can be as a bad joke. If it needs to be explained, it's not good, right? And I think that's good technology doesn't need training. But I do want to do a shout out here to, one of the sponsors who I met last week at ITB, Marcus Feller from Blackmagic. And they've done something that we've done at Citizen M as well. If you hire only actors, actresses, musicians for front desk or, guest facing roles, it means that you can't expect them to be trained on a PMS. They don't even know debit, credit, folio, Rumos. They don't understand any of that. And quite frankly, in the PMS world, there's still a lot of typing before somebody actually checks in. So, what Marcus has done in his hotel group, and he has, set the technology apart, is he created the user interface that people that are not trained can use, right? So it's really about, what do you need to do? Right? What do you have in front of you? The customer identification, doing the check-in. And you don't need to be hotel schooled to do these things. And I think that's where, your questions, like, how fond are people working in hospitality about technology? Yeah, I think they're pretty fond. They're probably using it. But yeah, if going to work means you have to use old technology, that's not a great experience. So, it's because of these type of things, and it's because of better connectivity that, people like Marcus are able to start a company on this, providing easier, facing screens for, people that are in the front with guests, just like, the Apple Genius guys, right? They're running around with their phones. They don't need, 10 days of training to learn how to order something.
Thanks, Leonard. I would just like to finish off with one question, and then I'll direct it to Roman. This conversation has largely focused on AI, artificial intelligence. And I'd like to hear your thoughts, Roman, as to where do you think AI will create value for businesses and customers? Just so that I can cover all bases, we have had a question from the floor about Google's helpful content strategy, which, hands up, I'm not familiar with Google's helpful content strategy. And will it affect the use of AI for generating content? Roman, I'm not sure if you're able to come in on that in your answer, but I will leave it with you.
I'm not familiar with that, no. Where do I think AI more widely is going to go? I think I sort of revert back to some of the comments I've made earlier. Huge potential. Very exciting. Clearly, ChatGPT is a leap forward. It's just the latest thing. Whether 10 years from now anyone will ever be able to remember that name or pronounce the letters in the right order or whatever, we'll wait to see. Betamax was better than VHS. That's what the technologists tell us. But you try saying that word to anyone under the age of about 35, and they won't know what you're talking about.
It was.
There you go. You've just told us your age.
Yeah.
So I think the jury's out on all of that. But I think the question is just how soon will these things be implemented? Right now, there's a lot of opportunities, and some of it's being used, as we've shown. I've got to talk about the clients using ChatGPT, where we've already got some kind of artificial intelligence going on there with a lot of chatbots and things. But the actually implementing those, my professional background until about 6 or 7 years ago was on the aviation side of things. Aviation is relatively easy because you've only got a few hundred airlines in the world. There's only a couple of GDSs, and so making changes, by contrast with the hotel industry, which is incredibly fragmented, and then even the big chains that you think of are really all franchises, and then you've got one person owns property, another person operates it, someone else provides the tech. Trying to implement that down to right the way down to through the hotels, all the way through to the tours and activities providers. Someone renting bicycles on the beach in Thailand, or doing transfers from a small regional airport in Japan to whatever the local experience is. I think is going to be incredibly hard. Somewhere on the chat group here mentioned about Africa and there not being proper laws and regulations there about data privacy and so on. The long tail of this could be decades.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Roman. Thanks, Leonard. Thanks, Mark. I know we have fast approached our allotted hour. I will flag here that this webinar is going to stay open for an extra 2 minutes right at the end for our audience members to follow up on any of the links and the LinkedIn posts that we've popped into the chat there. But I'm just going to ask my team to bring up the slides, as I just have some closing things that I would just like to run through before I bid you all farewell and we can get on with our day. But I would like to flag our next webinar is taking place on the 17th of April, and it is going to be talking about more stressed owners, more distressed assets, I question. So if you would like to join in, please sign up using the link that has been popped into the chat there. And if you're interested in working with us, please do get in touch with my colleagues, Katie or Steph. Their details are up on your screens now, and I believe their contact details have also been popped into the chat for you to follow up with. But all that's left for me to do today is to say thank you all to tuning in. Thank you to our panelists and thank you to our sponsors. You can follow us on all the social media channels that are up on your screens now if you simply can't wait until the 17th of April. But otherwise, take care, folks, and I will see you all very soon.